My name is Nonat, and welcome back to regular uploads, y'all. We should be getting back to 5 videos a week starting today. This last week where I took it nice and easy, it was super relaxing, it was super chill. I got some really cool collabs done and recorded that are coming your way later this week. And most of all, I greatly appreciate your patience as I just take this time to recollect myself. But we are back in action. This week you will be getting the Bard Guide, which you're watching right here today. You're going to be getting the Halfling Deep Dive later this week. You're going to be getting at least one of those collabs from this week, and then 1 or 2 more videos that I just kind of feel like making. Maybe I'll do a 5e versus 2e with a little more research this time. I appreciate all your comments pointing that all out. Sorry, I just haven't talked to you guys in a while, so I just felt like I should just shove it into the beginning of this video. If this is your first time watching a video of mine, you're probably very confused. But let's not waste any more time, because we are going to be covering the charismatic, boisterous, brimming with charm Bard. Although if you've seen my top 10 classes of Pathfinder 2e, you know the Bard is not my favorite. But these deep dive videos aren't entirely about my opinion, and I'll talk about things as they come up. Let's go ahead and get started with the obvious things. Key ability score being Charisma. What else would it be? Hit points 8 per level plus Constitution. Not bad, actually. It's about the same as a Rogue. They begin expert in perception, which is actually pretty good. I didn't expect that. And they're also an expert in will saves and trained in fortitude saves and reflex saves. They begin trained in the occultism and performance skills, as well as 4 plus their intelligence modifier number of skills. And here we can already see, while they do get a lot of skills compared to some other classes, they are nowhere near the skill junkie of the rogue, or bards from something like D&D 5e. And that's my first, I'll say complaint in quotations, because I've always loved the bard being a jack of all trades, but I'm going to tell you right now, that's not what you're going to get out of a bard in Pathfinder 2e. A bard in 2e is much more of a spellcaster than a jack of all trades. No longer are they able to do everything okay, now they've just doubled down on the spellcasting, and depending on who you are, you might really enjoy that. They get trained in simple weapons, as well as the longsword, rapier, sap, short bow, short sword, and whip, similar to a rogue. So they do still have access to some martial weapons, which is nice. They can still somewhat hold their own in combat, but unfortunately, as we'll see later, not really in the long run. They are trained in light armor, so they can at least wear something. Similar to the Oracle we talked about a few weeks ago, bards are spontaneous spellcasters. This means they know far less spells than a prepared spellcaster, but can cast any of them at will rather than preparing them. I'm not going to go too deep into this because I talked about it in the Oracle video, and I might make a video in the future going into all of the differences from spontaneous and prepared spellcasters, because there are a lot and it does confuse a lot of new players, but I'll skip over that for the sake of time. Where the bard starts to get unique is their composition spells, which, similar to almost any other spellcasting class, is just their form of focus spells. They start with 1 focus point, which can be regained by focusing for 10 minutes, which is just by writing music, playing music, basically doing bard things will get you your focus point back. They also start with the counter-performance composition spell. Counter-performance is actually really good when it comes up. You won't always be affected by auditory or visual effects, but when you are, as a reaction, which means bards do have a reaction at level 1, which is great, you can roll a performance check, and then you and your allies within 60 feet can use your performance check or their saving throw result, whichever is higher. So if you obviously have a really high performance skill, this can save someone's life if you're fighting something like a basilisk at level 5. Again, levels 1 through 3, you might be hard-pressed to find some specific auditory or visual effects, but even something like color spray could be affected by this. Now, what is super interesting about bards is they're the only class, I believe, to get focus cantrips. These function exactly like focus spells, and honestly function exactly like normal cantrips, except they're only available to bards. All bards start with the Inspire Courage composition cantrip. I can't tell you how hard it's going to be to have to keep saying composition in combination with other words. There's so many C words! Inspire Courage is sort of the bard's bread and butter at level 1. For 1 action, everyone within 60 feet gets a +1 status bonus to attack rolls, damage rolls, and saves against fear. The save against fear is fine, but the +1 to attacks and damage is really good, especially at level 1. +1 to damage at first level is so hard to come by. And the final level 1 class feature bards have to pick from is their Muse. Now this is basically the bard's subclass, but it doesn't decide too much about them. It mostly just gives them a specific spell in their repertoire and decides a free feat at first level. Starting off with the Enigma Muse, which is basically just a creature or being that is mysterious and you want to learn more about, which sounds a lot like an oracle mystery. You gain the Bardic Lore feat, which we'll be going over in just a few minutes, and add the True Strike spell to your spell repertoire. The Maestro Muse is just a performer, a virtuoso of sorts. It drives you to improve your art and escalate it to the next level. You gain the Lingering Composition feat as well as the Soothe spell to your repertoire. The Polymath Muse claims it's sort of the jack-of-all-trades bard. Your Muse drives you to get good at everything and experience everything that you can, but in reality it doesn't really give you that much in the way of expansive options. It gives you the Versatile Performance feat and the Unseen Servant to your spell repertoire. I'll be honest, I don't really know why it gives you Unseen Servant. I think it's just to help you do more stuff. And finally, in the Advanced Player's Guide, we got the Warrior Muse, which is all about making the battlefield your stage. You tell stories in the midst of combat as you clash steel, and it's not very good. You gain the Martial Performance feat and the Fear spell in your repertoire. And that's everything bards get at level 1. They're honestly surprisingly simple. You just pick your spells, your Muse, and you've basically got everything already. That's it. They're really simple to make at first level, which is nice. Just like any class, they start getting bard feats, skill feats, general feats. At 3rd level, their reflexes do already increase to expert. So by level 3, they're an expert in every saving throw except for fortitude. They get signature spells at 3rd level, which means every level they can pick a specific spell which can be heightened at will, same as other spontaneous casters. Skill increases, ability boosts, ancestry feats, it's all super normal stuff. Level 7's kinda boring. It's a really good level because you get expert spellcasting, which is fine, but it's unfortunate because you don't get anything else. That's all you get at level 7 as a bard. At level 9, their fortitude saves finally catch up to expert, and their will saves increase to master, allowing them to also automatically crit succeed normal will save successes. Level 11 sees bards finally increasing to expert proficiency with their weapons, as well as increasing their perception checks to master. 13th level is when they finally get expert in light armor, as well as weapon specialization to increase their damage a little bit. 15th level sees them become master in spellcasting, and level 17 sees their will saves bumping up to legendary, meaning they can no longer critically fail a will save. If they critically fail, they get a failure. If they succeed, they get a crit success. Pretty dang good. Additionally, even if they fail a will save against a harmful effect, it only deals half damage. And then level 19 is legendary spellcasting. That is all of the bard's class features. They really get most of their stuff from spells and from feats. You'll see this going forward when we cover other spellcasters that aren't the Oracle. They're gonna be pretty simple, all things considered, because most of their power comes from the spell list they choose from, not from the inherent class features. But let's go ahead and start jumping into some feats here, shall we? Starting off with Bardic Lore for the Enigma Muse is actually even more useful than people tend to think it is. Bardic Lore is a special type of lore that can be used to recall knowledge on any subject. Even if you're not trained in Arcana or Nature, you can roll Bardic Lore as if you were. However, what makes this even more powerful is you can use it to get specific. For those who aren't aware, when you roll Recall Knowledge using lore on a specific subject, it lowers the DC required. For example, if you're trying to identify a troll, and you just have Nature, I'm not sure what you actually roll to identify a troll, but I feel like they're in Nature, so if you were to roll Nature to Recall Knowledge, there would be a set DC, usually probably 15 plus the creature's level. But if you had Lore Trolls, chances are you know what a troll is, so that would shoot the DC down, probably from like a DC 20 down to like a DC 15 or maybe even lower. What's nice about Bardic Lore is you can effectively use this as lore for anything. Now the downside is you cannot increase this skill to expert. The only way you can do that is by getting your occultism to legendary. But what this means is even at higher levels, it might still be worth it to use bardic lore, because while you get a lower bonus, you are going against a much lower DC because you're using the lore skill. So yeah, really good skill. Also, in case you're wondering, there's no actual formula for how much the DC goes down when you use lore. It's entirely up to GM discretion. Lingering Composition from the Maestro Muse actually gives you an additional focus point, which is fantastic, and grants you the Lingering Composition focus spell. Lingering Composition is easily one of the strongest tools in the Bard's kit. For a free action, you add a flourish to the next composition cantrip you cast. You make a performance check based on the highest level target of your composition cantrip. So if you're targeting your allies, you use your level for the target DC, and if you're targeting an enemy, it uses their level for the DC. If you're not familiar with how to set DCs in Pathfinder, may I suggest this video up here? I go over exactly how to do it, a simple formula for how to do it, and even some easy tables in the book for reference. But with Lingering Composition, you spend a focus point and make a performance check against that DC. Should you fail, the composition lasts 1 round like normal, but you don't even lose the focus point for using Lingering Composition. Should you succeed, the composition cantrip's duration is increased to 3 rounds, and should you critically succeed, it's increased to 4 rounds. There is really, aside from a very rare critical failure, there is no bad outcome from this focus spell. Even at level 1, combining this with Inspire Courage, being able to cast Inspire Courage with Lingering Composition, if you succeed, that Inspire Courage now lasts 3 rounds, and you don't need to spend an action every round to recast it. Fantastic. Interestingly, bards get Reach spell, but they don't get access to Widen spell. Very weird. I don't know why they did that, because I think every other caster in the game gets Reach and Widen spell, but for some reason, bards do not get Widen spell. Versatile Performance from the Polymath Muse allows you to use your performance skill to make an impression, intimidate, and impersonate someone. You can also use your performance proficiency as the requirement for a skill feat that usually requires diplomacy, intimidation, or deception. This is amazing, I will say. I don't think it's quite the jack of all trades since they're all charisma skills, but it's still amazing to have, and you basically don't need to worry about investing skills into diplomacy, intimidation, and deception. From the APG, we get the Hymn of Healing composition spell. This one's okay. For 2 actions, you target yourself or an ally within 30 feet, and this can be sustained for up to 4 rounds. The target of the spell gains Fast Healing 2. What does that mean? Well, it means at the start of each of their turns, they regain 2 hit points. Additionally, when you cast the spell and on each following turn you sustain it, they gain 2 temporary hit points which last for that round. So, in a best case scenario, they're technically gaining 4 hit points per round for 4 rounds, albeit you're using an action each round to sustain it. So over the course of 4 rounds, you're effectively using 6 actions and a focus point to give them 24 hit points. Compare this to a level 1 heal spell with 2 actions which can heal for 16 instantly, and you can see why I'm not the biggest fan of this spell. Every 2 levels, the healing and temporary hit points do go up by 2, so it gets a little bit better, but overall I'm not too impressed. I think in the late game, if this is upcast at 5th level and you're level 9, and you can give them 10 temporary hit points every round, that is pretty good. It definitely gets better with time, but especially at the low levels, this is a very low impact focus spell. The Martial Performance Feat is the entire reason the Warrior Muse is garbage. You might think, oh, the Warrior Muse is designed to be a melee fighting bard, so the feat they get at first level must increase their proficiency or something, right? No. Martial Performance allows the bard to be trained with martial weapons. So you can use a greatsword on your bard. Cool. you're still only trained with it, and you don't get expert until 11th level, like a normal bard. And like all other bards, you don't go above expert. Even with the warrior muse, you just get access to martial weapons. That is all you get. Your proficiency is no better with them. Your proficiency with simple weapons and bardic weapons don't go up at all. That is all this feat does. When you gain the Bard Weapon Expertise class feature at 11th level, your proficiency with martial weapons increases to expert. This is awful, and I am so disappointed in the Warrior Muse. There's still more feats to come, so we'll see if it redeems itself down there, but in general, absolutely awful. I think it should have allowed them to at least get up to master like other martial classes. This would allow you to make a viable martial bard, but instead, you max out at expert like any other spellcaster. Well-Versed is just a really solid permanent bonus. +1 circumstance bonus to saving throws against auditory, illusion, linguistic, sonic, or visual spells. That is all really good. I feel like most spells, aside from direct damage spells, will fall under one of those categories. That's amazing. Looking at level 2 spells, cantrip expansion. You get 2 more cantrips. Esoteric polymath is okay. Let me explain it first. You get a spellbook, almost exactly like a wizard's, but remember, you're a spontaneous caster. You don't need a spellbook. But what this means is you can use occultism to learn a spell and add it to your spellbook, just like a wizard. During your daily preparations, you can choose 1 spell in your book. 1, not 1 per level, 1. If you already knew that spell in your repertoire, it becomes an additional signature spell so you can heighten it at will. Or, if it wasn't already in your repertoire, it counts as being in your repertoire for that day. That's it. Now, getting an additional signature spell is pretty cool, but you still have limited spell slots, and adding a spell to your repertoire is really hard to do as a spontaneous caster, so it shouldn't be undersold how much this does give you, but it seems a little cumbersome to have a whole spellbook that you can only take 1 spell from per day. I'm not a big fan of this. It's only for the Polymath Muse, and it's overall just kinda boring. I feel like if it was 1 additional spell per spell level, maybe that would be too powerful, but only 1 additional spell per day total is a little bit limiting. I will say what this does allow you to do, especially at low levels like level 2, is take, or technically it wouldn't be useful till level 3, but it would let you take an offensive spell and a control or a defensive spell as signature spells of the same level. So at level 1, you could take, like, Grease. I don't know why you would want to heighten Grease. You could take Color Spray and Magic Missile, both as signature spells to heighten at will. The Maestro Muse gets the hilariously named Inspire Competence. This is a composition cantrip, so you can cast it as much as you want, and overall, it's pretty low impact. Effectively, you spend an action to play the song, and then you can take the aid action for an ally, but you can roll performance instead of the same skill check they're rolling. Normally, if someone's rolling to do something and you want to aid them, you have to make the same check. If they're rolling an athletics check, you would have to roll athletics to aid them. This lets you roll performance no matter what they're doing. What is nice about this is you can't fail. Well, you can critically fail. But if you get a normal failure, you do get a success instead, granting them that +1. Once you're legendary in performance and you automatically crit succeed even on a failure, that's pretty good. But overall, it's okay. I suppose as a cantrip, an automatic aid check isn't bad. Being able to give someone a +1 without making them immune to it, like guidance, is pretty good and shouldn't be undersold. I guess you can think of this as a permanent, infinite +1 to all skill checks as long as you're there to play for them, which isn't bad. So, editing this in post, I realized I totally skipped over Lore Master's Etude. Etude? Etude. It's a simple focus spell. As a free action, if you or an ally were going to use Recall Knowledge, you can let yourself or them roll twice and use the better result. Simple as that. It's okay for a focus point, and honestly, being able to reroll any dice is a pretty powerful effect. And since it's a focus spell that's likely not going to be used in combat, you can always just get the focus point back right away. So, pretty good. Can't go wrong here. Multifarious Muse is effectively, I want one of those other level 1 feats. You choose any other level 1 feat other than the one granted by your Muse, you gain that feat, and you also treat your Muse as both of them. Let's say you are an Enigma Muse and you want the Polymath first level feat. Well, you take that first level feat, and now your Muse is an enigmatic polymath. I don't think it really changes much, and you don't gain any other benefits of that Muse, but it is treated as both now. You can also take this feat multiple times, and if you wanted to, be a bard of all the Muses, which is an enigmatic polymathian warrior maestro. I'm getting some Absurd vibes. Also, in case it wasn't clear, this also lets you take any feat that is locked behind that Muse. So if you are an enigmatic polymath, you can now take any feat in the future that requires Enigma or Polymath, which does unlock a lot of stuff. So this is an investment feat. Directed audience in the APG. Instead of casting a composition spell that is normally an emanation, to a cone up to 10 feet larger than the original emanation. So effectively you can just cut off everything but a frontal cone of your song. Now, it has a weird stipulation that if something only has an emanation of 5 feet, you can only increase the cone to 10 feet. But otherwise, if the emanation is 10 feet or greater, you change it into a cone in any direction and increase the length by 10 feet. So a 30-foot emanation could become a 40-foot cone in case you want to just affect one specific thing. The Warrior Muse gains access to the Song of Strength composition cantrip. Song of Strength grants all of your allies +1 to all athletics checks, as well as a +1 to all DCs against athletics skill actions. This is a little hard to understand at first, it's not worded super well, but effectively, if anyone tries to disarm, trip, shove, anything that requires an athletics check against your ally gets a +1 to the appropriate DC. So if someone's trying to trip them, they get a +1 to their reflex DC to resist it. Inspired Defense grants you the Inspired Defense composition cantrip. This cantrip's honestly kind of insane. For one action and for one round, you and all allies in a 60-foot emanation get a +1 status bonus to armor class and to saving throws, as well as resistance equal to half of the spell level to all physical damage. At low levels, this is nuts, man. It's only like 1 resistance, but +1 AC, +1 to all saving throws, and reduce all physical damage by 1. That's kinda nutty, not gonna lie. Melodious Spell is some pretty cool meta magic, and it's mostly a roleplay feat, which can have some really cool uses. For one action, if your next action is to cast a spell, you can instead make a performance check against all observers' perception DC. If you beat their perception, they can't see the verbal or somatic components of your spell. They can still see the effect, so if you cast Magic Missile, they'll see you playing a song, and then 3 rays of energy shoot out from you. But otherwise, they can't tell you're casting a spell. This is great for something like Charm, which doesn't have a visual effect, so you just play your thing, and then everybody just sees this person become nice to you, and they have no idea what happened. Really good for hiding your magic. Triple Time grants you the composition cantrip of the same name. Are you sensing a theme here? Triple Time is another really good cantrip to have on hand. You won't use it all the time, but when you need it, granting a +10 status bonus to your allies' movement speed is pretty good. And this affects all speeds, by the way, not just ground speed. So if they can fly, +10 feet to their fly speed too. Versatile Signature really does make the bards stand out against other spontaneous spellcasters, as this makes them the only ones who can change their signature spell during daily preparations. Normally you can only change that by retraining or during a level up, but being able to do this every single day makes the bard incredibly versatile as a spellcaster. You do need to have the Polymath Muse though in order to take this. Combat Reading is an interesting ability. For one action, you basically make an occultism recall knowledge check, but the GM rolls it secretly against the target's deception or stealth DC. Additionally, this enemy must be observed by you, and if you critically succeed, you get to know 2 pieces of information that the GM decides at random. This information can be the enemy's highest weakness, their lowest saving throw, an immunity, or their highest resistance. On a normal success, you only get to hear 1 of these, and on a critical failure, you get fake information. That's why it's a secret check, so the GM can tell you, oh yeah, he's totally weak to fire, dude. The Warrior Muse can get Courageous Advance, which is a meta magic effect for the Inspire Courage cantrip. If you use this action before casting Inspire Courage, one of the allies affected by it can take an immediate stride action. However, this does use up that ally's reaction. Ritual Researcher immediately makes bards the single best character to take the Ritualist archetype because it gives them a permanent +2 circumstance bonus to all primary and secondary checks attempted as part of a ritual. This is also only available to the Enigma Bard. Dirge of Doom grants you a composition cantrip. This one's actually pretty insane, I won't lie. All enemies within 30 feet are frightened. That's it, there's no saving throw. They can't reduce their frightened below frightened 1. They're just permanently frightened 1 as long as they're near you, which is a -1 to everything. That's really good. Harmonize is a metamagic feat for the Maestro Muse, which brings up something I actually hadn't talked about yet. If you cast a composition spell or cantrip on your turn, you cannot cast another one that same turn, because obviously you can't play more than one song. But Harmonize allows the Maestro to do just that. This effectively allows them to have 2 composition spells active at the same time, so long as they spend the action to activate the metamagic. Steady Spellcasting gives you a DC flat check of 15 to not get interrupted if your spellcasting would be interrupted. Pretty standard stuff. Assured Knowledge basically gives you assurance in any skill when using Recall Knowledge, including Bardic Lore. Additionally, as long as you're an expert in that skill, you can take the Automatic Knowledge skill feat even if you don't already have assurance in that skill. Pretty decent stuff. You can almost think of this as taking like 5 assurance skill feats. That's pretty amazing. Defensive Coordination is a metamagic feat for the Warrior Muse and is honestly kinda cool. You use an action to activate Defensive Coordination, and then on your next action, if you cast Inspired Defense, for one action, you cast the cantrip, you raise a shield, and your ally raises a shield as well, if they can. But once again, this does use the ally's reaction to raise a shield, which means they can't shield block, but it does give them a potential +2 to AC, so pretty solid stuff. Educate Allies has a lot going on, but is pretty good. You need to already have the Well-Versed feat from first level, the one that gives you +1 saving throws to basically all effects, and if you are playing a composition spell, one of your allies is affected by it, and they become subject to an auditory, illusion, linguistic, sonic, or visual trait saving throw, you can give them your +1 bonus by using your reaction. Additionally, when you do this, your bonus increases to +2 until the start of your next turn. So it's a lot has to go perfectly to set this up, but it's not too hard, and it's a big bonus for everybody. Well, you and an ally. Solid. Song of Marching gives you a composition cantrip. This effectively extends the duration you and your allies can hustle. It lasts for 1 hour, you cast it, you and your allies can hustle for the spell's duration, and then they're immune for 1 day. Which means, effectively, right at the end of a hustle, right before the time would run out and everyone would get exhausted and fatigued, you can cast Song of Marching to get 1 extra hour of marching out. Additionally, once you're level 11, it can march for an additional 2 hours, and once you're level 17, you can hustle for an additional 4 hours. So, solid stuff. Again, it's a cantrip. What's the problem with it? You know, you can just go real fast. Real fast. Eclectic Skill, which requires the Polymath Muse, is a pretty solid upgrade. You can add your level to all skill checks, even if you're not trained, and you can attempt any trained action in any skill, even if you're not trained. Once you're a legendary in Occultism, you can attempt any expert action in any skill. It's pretty good and is just a little taste of that jack of all trades I wish bards had more of in 2e. Inspire Heroics gets us a new focus spell and a focus point. Inspire Heroics is actually a really risky play, but can have some really big rewards. You use Inspire Heroics as a free action, and then cast either Inspire Defense or Inspire Courage. When you do this, the DC for your performance check increases to a very hard DC of your level, which will usually add, I think, an extra 3 or 4 to the DC. Should you succeed, though, your bonus from this spell increases to a +2 instead of a +1. So +2 to attack rolls and damage rolls, or +2 to armor class and saving throws. If you still manage to critically succeed, this increases to a +3, which at level 8 is insane. +3 to attack rolls and +3 to damage rolls and +3 against fear effects, or +3 to armor class and +3 to saving throws. If you can manage to make this work somehow, that's nutty. Even just the +2 is crazy, I'll be honest. Similar to Lingering Composition, even if you normal fail, it doesn't change the effect at all, but you don't lose the focus point, which is very nice. Know-it-all, when you normal succeed at any kind of knowledge check, your GM gives you more information than you would have gotten. If you critically succeed, they give you even more information. This is super vague, and I kind of like it. It just makes more work for the GM. But it also makes sense, they're just a smart boy. The accompany reaction isn't bad. Effectively, when your ally casts a spell of some kind, either a spell slot or a focus spell, you can spend a focus point of your own or a spell slot at least one level higher than the spell they're casting, and make a performance check against a very hard DC of that character's level. Should you succeed, your ally doesn't spend the focus point or spell slot, but you still do. So this is a reaction that, if you succeed, is the same net loss, even higher net loss if you spent a spell slot, and overall I don't think is worth the risk. It's a very hard DC, so chances are it's gonna be difficult to succeed, so I don't see the point of this. If you succeed, you just spend your resource instead of theirs. If you fail, you both spend a resource and yours did nothing. I get it if you just need the wizard to have that extra fireball and you don't have anything like it, but this is really niche and most of the time is not going to be worth it. Call and Response is okay, but really shouldn't be an 8th level feat. It's meta magic, so you spend an action and it enhances your next composition spell. If you use a composition cantrip with a duration of 1 round, you can make it a Call and Response. What this means is everyone is affected by it normally, but one ally can use an action to respond and sustain the spell for themselves. This is useful if you're only affecting 1 or 2 allies with it, but if you're affecting multiple allies, it's probably better for you to just spend a spell to cast, spend an action to cast it again on the following turn, This is... it's a good way to easily stack spells on a target. If you cast Inspire Courage and make it a Call and Response for the ally, then on their turn they can respond for an action which gives them another round of Inspire Courage, and then back on your turn you can cast Inspire Defense. And if you don't have the feat that lets you cast multiple composition spells, this is a good way to affect a target with multiple spells. So it's okay, but it's a lot of hoops to jump through. Courageous Opportunity is an attack of opportunity. That's it. It's just a reaction that lets you make an attack of opportunity as a Warrior Muse Bard. But it only works if you have Inspire Courage active. Because, they're already behind in proficiency. Why not give their attacks of opportunity another stipulation? Warrior Muse Bards suck! Soulsight effectively gives you a 6th sense. Similar to hearing, it's an imprecise sense, so you have to focus to actually use it, but you can sense nearby living things with a spirit, effectively. Not just living. Most living things have a spirit, most non-mindless undead have a spirit, and really any kind of haunt or, GM discretion, what is a spirit? It's called Spirit Sense, that's what it does. It's like hearing, specifically for spirits. However, keep in mind this does not penetrate solid objects, so if something's on the other side of a wall, Spirit Sense will not detect it. House of Imaginary Walls might be the best name for a composition cantrip. This cantrip is honestly so funky and weird, and I kinda love it. For one action, you literally do the mime 10-foot by 10-foot wall gag, and then that 10-foot by 10-foot wall becomes solid to anyone who chooses to believe it. Which means you and your allies can climb up on top of it. Creatures can choose to disbelieve it by rolling perception against your spell DC, and if they disbelieve it, they can ignore it, which means while you and your allies are standing on top of it, they can run and walk through it like normal. It's so weird and brain-busting. It says it lasts for 1 round, so I'm not sure if it just disappears at the start of your next turn. It's not super clear, which means if you all climb up onto it and your turn starts, do you all just fall to the ground? I think that's how it works, which is kind of hilarious. What is nice is that if a creature fails to disbelieve it, even their weapons won't go through it. I think even if they fire an arrow at it, the arrow will hit the wall and won't hurt you. It'll just hurt the wall, which does have HP equal to quadruple the level of the spell. Quicken casting, classic, free action, reduce the action cost of a spell by 1, you cannot make it a free action. Unusual composition, again, does give the polymath that versatility that it really sort of defines it. You can change, the long and short of it is, you can change any somatic components to verbal, and any verbal components to somatic components for any spell you cast, so long as you use an action before it. This is another one that's really good in roleplay. If you need to be quiet, and you can do your, Naruto ninja hand signs, but you can't do, long verbal chanting, you can just do a bunch of somatic components without hopefully making a sound and cast that spell and not giving away your position. Very solid. Annotate composition is really complicated, but really freaking cool. The long and short of it, you can put a song on paper, and anyone who can read your language that you wrote it in can activate it like a scroll. You spend 10 minutes on a focus point to put any single action, composition, spell, or cantrip onto the page. You can also spend an additional focus point to use something like lingering composition to power it up and put that on the page as well. All performance checks for these spells are rolled in secret by the GM, so the bard doesn't actually know exactly how powerful the spell is on paper. When a creature activates the scroll for one action, it just creates the effect as though you had just cast it right then. It's really cool, so you can just cast Inspire Courage, slap it on a piece of paper, give it to an ally, and then when they need to, they can use it. This is incredibly versatile. What is important is that when you spend a focus point on this, you cannot regain that focus point until the spell has been cast. So you can't just stock up on 20 Inspire Courage pages and just cast them without using focus points, even though Inspire Courage is a cantrip and a terrible example. You can also just disable the scroll at any time with a single action, and all of these scrolls lose their power during your next daily preparation. You can't carry them over day to day. Courageous Assault, meta magic for the Warrior Muse. You spend an action, and then if your next action is to inspire courage, then one ally affected by it can use their reaction to make a free strike. Really powerful, really good. Martial archetype does it better. I'm gonna get some hate for that one. Ode to Ouroboros, composition spell. Ode to Ouroboros is kind of insane. It's just a reaction that uses a focus point, and if a creature within 60 feet would reduce its dying condition to the point where it would die, it instead doesn't. It just stays at 1 below its total dying condition that would cause it to die, and doesn't die. This can't stave off instant death effects like Disintegrate, but if someone's bleeding out on the ground and they're going to hit dying 4, you can use Ode to Ouroboros and a focus point to just stop that from happening once per round. Really good. Symphony of the Unfettered Heart, another composition spell. Symphony of the Unfettered Heart. For 2 actions, you can use your performance to counteract an effect on yourself or an ally. If you're not sure how counteract checks work, check out this video right here. It'll be what you're looking for. You can use this to counteract grabbed, immobilized, paralyzed, restrained, slowed, or stunned. Very good things to be able to remove. However, if you fail, the target is immune for 1 day. However, that's only to that specific effect for 1 day. So if you fail against someone being paralyzed, you can't help them with paralysis, but you can still help them with slowed. And once you're level 17, you can do this to 4 creatures at once. Very nice. Eclectic Polymath is okay. You need to have the Esoteric Polymath feat from 2nd level, and when you take the spell from your book and add it to your repertoire, you can permanently keep it in your repertoire if you choose to remove a different spell. This lets you swap out one spell every day and keep customizing your spell repertoire as needed. It's okay. Inspirational Focus, you regenerate 2 focus spells instead of 1. Enigma's Knowledge. If you have the Assured Knowledge feat from earlier, you now just get the effects of the Automatic Knowledge feat for any skill that can recall knowledge. This is a skill feat that you don't need to take. So now we have Assurance for all of our Recall Knowledge feats, and we have Automatic Knowledge for all of our Recall Knowledge skills. That's like 10 or more skill feats for free for 2 class feats. That's not a bad exchange. Reverberate. As a reaction, if you would take sonic damage, you can attempt to reflect it back at its source. You attempt a performance check against the spell DC of the creature that cast the sonic spell. If you critically succeed, you reduce the triggering damage by 4 times your level, which is at least 48 at this point. And the caster takes damage equal to the amount of damage you reduced. So if you were going to take 30 and you just critically succeed, you take nothing and they take 30 sonic damage. Should you only normal succeed, you simply double your level instead of quadrupling, which still reduces the damage by 24 and redirects it back at the source. Hilariously, if you critically fail, you redirect the sonic damage back at yourself. So you just take double damage, which is brutal and will probably kill you in one hit. I love it. Shared Assault is really doubling down on odds. If you use Courageous Assault to give your ally an attack for free that they use their reaction on, and if they critically hit, then another ally within range of Inspire Courage can make another attack. This does not carry on in a chain. If the second free attack critically hits, it doesn't grant another one, and it's simply a maximum of 2 extra attacks. So this can be good, maybe if you're specifically targeting a fighter with incredible to-hit stats and might just get a critical anyway almost all the time because he's a fighter. Maybe it's pretty good. But otherwise, I don't think it's worth the feat investment just for a chance if they critical. Allegro, Composition Cantrip. This is a pretty decent cantrip. For 1 action, you target an ally, they become quickened, which allows them to strike, stride, or step an additional time per turn. This is okay. It's basically just sacrificing one of your actions to give it to an ally. However, when combined with Lingering Composition, this is pretty solid. If you use Lingering Composition and you succeed, you're effectively hasting someone for 3 rounds, which should not be undersold. And I did undersell it in my Martial review video way back when. I still think the Martial does it better. Fight me. Soothing Ballad. It's a focus spell. For 2 actions and a focus point, you target yourself and up to 9 allies within 30 feet. This spell either attempts to counteract fear effects affecting all of the targets, counteract paralysis effects affecting all of the targets, or restore 7d8 hit points to all of the targets. Counting yourself, you can potentially reheal for 70d8 with this spell, which is kind of insane. And every 2 levels, it goes up by 1d8 per target. So if you cast this as a 9th level focus spell, you could potentially heal from 90d8, which is pretty good, not gonna lie. True Hypercognition. For 1 action, you make 5 recall knowledge checks. This is effectively really useful for if you don't know what something is at all, you can just roll Arcana, Occultism, Nature, Religion, and Bardic Lore to be safe. It's only for the Enigma Muse, so you'll have Bardic Lore. Gosh, the APG loves these multiple paragraph feats, don't they? Earworm! Effectively, while exploring, you can spend at least 10 minutes repeating the same song over and over and over again. Not just the song, but just the chorus. And effectively, it lets you cast your first composition spell or cantrip as a free action in the encounter, or whenever you want to use it. Because of the way you have to prepare it, you can't use things like Lingering Composition or anything like that, so it's basically just 1 round of a free composition cantrip, but hey, action economy, yo. Once you trigger it in this way, you can't trigger it again and have to spend another 10 minutes while exploring to activate another earworm. Triumphant Inspiration is actually pretty good, Warrior Muse. Good job. For a free action, if an ally should get a critical hit with a melee weapon or unarmed strike, you can cast any 1 action composition cantrip for free. Vigorous Inspiration is such a bad level 14 bard feat. For 1 action, you infuse your next Inspire Courage action, which has to be the following action. You cast Inspire Courage, and you and all affected allies get 3 plus your Charisma mod in temporary hit points for 1 minute. At level 14, that is a maximum of plus 8. That's it. You spent an action to give everybody 8 temporary hit points, which is fine, but it's level 14, man. You can do so much better with one of your actions. Effortless Concentration lets you sustain a bard spell for a free action. No, you cannot use this to sustain a composition because compositions don't work that way. Studious Capacity is just better than Effortless Concentration. You basically get 1 additional spell slot of every level. You can only use that spell slot once you've run out of spells for that level, but hey, You just get an extra spell per level, which at level 16, that's 7 additional spells per level, because you cannot use this effect on your highest level spell slot. But that's a lot of extra spells per day, I'll be honest. That's an incredible feat. Very nice. Courageous Onslaught just combines Courageous Advance and Courageous Assault into one action, and finally makes the Bard better than the Marshal at level 16. For one action, you alter your next Inspire Courage cantrip. One ally affected by Inspire Courage can use their reaction to stride and strike, which is insane. It's a crazy powerful combo. It just sucks that it's only at level 16 you get access to this. Resounding Finale, just for flavor's sake, is such a cool feat. It is a reaction, and if you or an ally are benefiting from one of your composition spells, and you or them would take sonic damage, you can end your composition spell with a powerful flourish to gain resistance equal to double the spell's level against the sonic damage. So if you were going to take 25 sonic damage and you're casting Inspire Courage at 8th level, well, you can end Inspire Courage to gain 16 sonic resistance against that attack because you drown out all the noise with your dramatic finish. It's not the most powerful feat in the world, but it's really, really cool. The name of this feat, Deep Lore for the Enigma, doesn't really make a lot of sense with its effect. You get one additional spell in your repertoire per level, which is really good, don't get me wrong, this is a phenomenal effect. A spontaneous spellcaster gaining 9 new spells in their repertoire? That's fantastic. I just don't know why it's called Deep Lore. Eternal Composition, in my opinion, makes Maestros the single strongest muse at high level, and I mean like 18 through 20, because of its ability. You are permanently quickened and can use that extra action to cast a composition cantrip every single turn, and additionally, while exploring, you can just say, I have this cantrip active at all times. It specifically states, even before your first turn in combat, that cantrip is active. Meaning you can just give a permanent +1 to AC or +1 to attack rolls to everyone forever. Impossible Polymath is sort of the culmination of the polymaths, look at me, I'm so versatile, and it's a cool effect. You have to have Esoteric Polymath, and you have to be at least trained in Arcana, Religion, or Nature, or ideally, all 3. As long as you are trained in Arcana, Nature, or Religion, once per day when you add a spell from your book to your repertoire, that spell can be from the Arcane, Primal, or Divine spell lists. Now keep in mind, you can't just add any spell though, you still need to learn the spell first. So even right at level 18, unless you've been preemptively adding these spells you can't cast to your spellbook, this feat will do absolutely nothing for you until you get spells in your spellbook. It's okay, I'm not a big fan of the entire polymath version of spellcasting, and you know me, I'm still bitter because I like Jack-of-all-trades bards, and this is their version of Jack-of-all-trades bards, except it's just Jack-of-all-spells. All in my head is cute, funny, but can still actually save your life. As a reaction, if you would take damage from a strike or spell that doesn't have any kind of instant death effect like Disintegrate, you can trick yourself into thinking it's all in your head. There's no saving throw or skill check with this either, it's just use a reaction, and all of the damage you are about to take becomes mental damage and becomes non-lethal, which is the most important part. This means you will not become dying, you'll just drop to 0 hit points and fall unconscious. So even if that ogre with a great club is about to smash you for 80 damage, you can go, "You're not real!" Boom! And then you just pass out. Don't ask me how this makes sense, it just does. And even if you find a way to become immune to mental damage, you can't use this reaction while immune. Discordant Voice powers up your Inspire Courage. While affected by Inspire Courage, they also gain an additional 1d6 sonic damage. I understand this is powerful, but it's level 18! At least make it a d12, come on! Level 18 for 1d6 bonus damage? Yes, it's on all of your allies' attacks, and I know that this is hard to balance. I think this could have been level 12 or 14 and been fine. Level 18? Come on. Come on. Fatal Aria, the final composition spell in the Core Rulebook. For one action, you perform music so perfect the target might die of joy or sorrow. There is no saving throw for this, it just has a different effect depending on the target's level. If they are level 16 or lower, they die. There is no saving throw, there is nothing. GM, if you just want to kill a player less than level 16, make an enemy level 20 bard with Fatal Aria, and they don't get a choice. This is so not fun. If the target is level 17, they either die if they have less than 50 hit points left, or they just drop to 0 hit points and become Dying 1. If they're level 18 or higher, they instantly take 50 damage. No saving throw, nothing. There's not even a way to reduce this. It doesn't even say what kind of damage. It just says the target takes 50 damage. If this reduces them to 0 hit points, they are instantly killed. Now at level 20, 50 is not necessarily a crazy amount. It might be about a quarter of their hit points, but that's still a lot for one action and a focus point. This is really strong. Perfect Encore, you get another 10th level spell, same as all other spellcasters. You're not special. Symphony of the Muse is kind of underwhelming unless you have already taken the Maestro Muse as well and taken the Quickened feat from level 18. If you are a Maestro and you have Harmonize and the Quickened casting and Symphony of the Muse, this does get really good because you can now have any number of compositions playing at the same time. This means on your turn while Quickened, you can Inspire Defense and Inspire Courage and cast a composition spell and something else and have them all going and buffing at the same time, which is kinda nutty. Pied Piping is our final composition spell of the day. Pied Piping is a 2-action composition focus spell with an emanation of only 5 feet. However, every round you can spend an action to increase the emanation by 5 feet. Any creature, this means allies included, within the emanation must make a will saving throw. On a critical success, nothing happens, which is kind of a letdown for a level 20 focus spell to have I know a critical success is supposed to be, perfect, but it's a level 20 focus spell, come on. On a success, they're just fascinated with you. That's it. On a failure, the creature uses all of their actions to move towards you and compliment you on your performance. Should they be attacked in any way, however, it will break the spell on them. And should they critically fail, they become your minion, which means you can spend an action to give them 2 actions every turn. But again, if they take any damage from any source, it breaks the spell. Needless to say, I am not impressed by this level 20 focus spell. It's not great. Sure, maybe you could use this to get a whole horde of people on your side, but it only lasts until they take damage from any source. It doesn't even say a hostile action from you or your allies. It's if a hostile action is used. If their ally slaps them in the face and says, "Wake up," they wake up. That's it. That's the end of the spell. It's not great. And the final feat, Ultimate Polymath, is... okay. All of your spells are signature spells. Effectively, you can heighten any spell however you want. Congratulations.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You just don't have to prepare your spells. That is your level 20 feat. I'm not a fan of this. The APG really let me down with the level 20 feats. Core Rulebook, way better. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Bard in Pathfinder 2e. I will say, reading it all start to finish, I have a little more respect for them than I did, and a lot of my low ranking for them in my personal favorite classes is just due to them not having anything outside of spellcasting and music, which are basically just more spells, you know? I like all the synergy with their composition cantrips, all the feats that power them up. It's really cool, and they have some cool support stuff, but that's all they do. From a class that I've always adored for being this flexible, good at everything, not a master at anything, it's just another spellcaster now, man. I don't usually give my opinions too heavily, and I usually like all the classes, but man, bards, man, they're bards. They definitely play music. They definitely cast spells. But that is all from me. Let me know what you think. Do you like bards? Do you hate bards? Tell me in the comments your thoughts. Tell me how wrong I was. Tell me how right I was. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on the video. Ring the bell. Do what you're gonna do. I don't control you. I don't have Pied Piping, the focus spell. I'm not a level 20 bard. I may be a Shadow Dancer sellout archetype, but I'm not a bard. Thank you guys so much for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons for being amazing, supporting what I do. If you would like to also support what I do, there are links in the description to my Patreon, where of course you can support me. There's various tiers. There's a link to my Discord, where we have a wonderful budding community growing, where everyone is really cool, hangs out, and talks about stuff. You can follow me on Twitter as well, where I sometimes post stupid stuff. But that is an hour and 35 minutes of talking about the Bard. I'm gonna go eat some leftover pizza from last night. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones.